with a focus on how we can switch, not necessarily just switch, but how we can facilitate not just individual developers contributing to Plum, but also the big amount of new organizations and companies we see appearing in the Plum world, and how we can use these company resources to make things happen instead of just single people. We've been very lucky to get a great group of key players in the Plum community to participate on this panel. And it would be very cool if you could have like a short 30-second introduction of each of you, just for those people who don't know who you all are. And could you start, Matt?
Okay, so I'm Matt Hamilton from a company called NetSite in the UK. So we've been going, 8-9 years now. We've got a team of 9 people in the UK and a turnover of probably about $1 million US dollars. And we do Plone integration and development for sort of end clients. Yeah.
Thanks. Tarek?
Hey, I'm Tarek from Ingenieweb in Paris. So we're a company of 20 developers and we work mainly with Plone. And we've been around for quite a few years in the Plone community. So, well.
Excellent. Calvin?
I'm Calvin Hendricks Parker, and I was 6 feet up. I've been doing Plone, or Zope, I should say, since about '98. So I'm kind of old school Zope world here. We went to the very first Plone conference in NOLA, and since then we've been doing primarily Plone content management system integrations. 6 feet up is about 13 full-time people, and we have 2 sides of the house. We've got development, and we have a technical services side that does professional services and hosting. So I think we've kind of got a lot of bases covered in the Plone community.
And Chris?
Great. My name is Chris Johnson, and my company is called If People. We're based in Atlanta, in Georgia. And we have a staff of about 6 people in If People, and then we have these very strong collaborative relationships with a network of free software developers that are in their own companies. The network is called FairSource. We started our company in Argentina about 5 years ago, and are now located in Atlanta. And we also have kind of 2 sides of the house. Mostly our staff is dealing with the strategic and consulting side of online collaboration, and how to use the internet effectively for furthering the goals and mission of values-driven enterprises. And then we have our just development side, which is done through our FairSource network. If I could just ask one thing too, can we get everybody to like move up so we're not speaking to like a big void since it's such a huge room? Can you guys come forward, please?
Come collaborate with us.
Please.
And then there is myself. I'll try to be participating as well as just hosting this. I'm Gerd Beckholt, managing director of Yarn, like a international company based in Norway. We've got 6 full-time employees and something like 8-9 contractors, all of which are Plone core developers. So we feel a special responsibility to actually pushing development forward, as we are a lot of the community. What we have seen is that as a Plone community, we've seen lots of contribution over the last few years, and many of these are from people working in consultancies. What we see a lot is the story where there is a company that grows to maybe 6 people. It often has one highly technical person who's part of the Plone community and that contributes back to Plone and the product area around it, but is usually based on personal initiative and the willingness to be part of that, and the company itself doesn't usually have much relations with Plone and the community around it. When these people get too much stuff to do, it is really hard for them to keep the relationship with Plone, and we see lots of very, very good developers drift off into doing company work and not being able to keep up their relation with the Plone community. And what we're going to try is to see like which ways can we find that can allow us as companies to participate and take this role in letting people contribute, be that technical or non-technical, and keep that contribution spirit alive over time, even though there is too much work to do. There's paid work, and keep this flow of contributions. We have several initiatives already happening. We have been trying something called the 10% manifesto, where we actually try to commit 10% of our working time to actually doing Plone. It is very hard to manage. Cannot be declared a big success yet, but we're trying. Calvin has been doing their. Can you tell us a bit about your Plone tune-up days?
Yeah, I mean, I think we joined the community like a long time ago, but never really had a formal way of giving back into the community. We've always kind of reported bugs, submitted patches, but we felt like, kind of as Gare did with the 10% manifesto, that we needed a more formalized way of saying we need to set aside X amount of time. So when we thought about this further, we thought about, why don't we just say we're going to set aside this time, but then invite others to join us at the same time. So if they want to kind of get indoctrinated into how you contribute back into Plone, we've created what's called a Plone tune-up day. We've been running them now for a couple months, about 5. We've had 5 tune-ups to varying successes. I think the first few, we had a lot of people participating. What is hard about it, and I think Gary's also right, is you need to have kind of a critical mass of people, at least inside your own company, to be able to contribute, because it's hard as a one-man team to like break away from just trying to swim as a company to then contribute back at the same time. I think we've grown at least to a size where we can help contribute back effectively with these tune-up days. So we typically do every other week or every couple weeks we do a Friday afternoon where we try and dedicate the whole time. The issues we've seen with doing that has been it's really hard to break away like just kind of like that at a snap to doing non-customer work to doing strictly, say, open source work, because the customer issues kind of trickle in still, and you have this great urge to take care of them first, but you really need to try and dedicate that time to doing Plone specific work. So hopefully what we've created or are working on creating, I don't think it's anywhere near any kind of finalized state of a tune-up, is maybe the starts of a framework for others to come in, learn how to contribute. What's been really helpful is we've had some of the core contributors like Hanno in the room at the same time while we're doing our tune-up, and these people are really helpful for bringing along new people. We can help them, maybe they don't have commit rights right away, so we can help commit the patches or review the patches or kind of guide them towards the things they should try and take care of. So those are the things we've been trying to do in our latest effort.
Thanks. Just a little piece of information. If anyone in the room wants like to ask questions and stuff, just raise your hand and we can take that in between. Oh, one already.
I'm Kim from University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. I was curious to know, how do you decide if you're going to work on one of these two?
I think that's where it's really helpful to have non-technical people kind of rolled into the mix. Almost more important than technical people. Technical people are going to go after the most complex, biggest glory, craziest feature they can probably try and put in, which may also produce the greatest risk to Plone as a product, where the kind of not so glamorous work of deciding which bugs need to really be fixed for the next kind of minor release is very important. Gabrielle from 6 Feet Up is a project manager and understands like getting a project done and not necessarily how you can put the neatest feature in. So she's really taking care of, well, she sits down with me
Calvin,
and helps decide.
I think we need to cut the tune-ups themselves, since they're actually working, and see how we can get a bit further. So I'm going to cut you off.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think non-technical people are very key to this process.
Is there ways of the way we how we structure our everyday work that we can change processes to actually facilitate sharing and contributing in the ways that we do our everyday work without doing massive contributions?
Yeah, I guess, one of the things, if you're looking at that from a sort of a technical point of view, is starting to get people as soon as possible, say within an organization, coming along to some of the events, coming along to sprints or conferences or whatever, just so they can get a feel for how the community works. Because it's very difficult for them to actually get involved with the community, which is just some vague notion of something out there. They see stuff from it, but until they start to get to meet people and have a beer with people, it's very difficult to kind of empathize with it. And I think coming along to events like this you start to see, okay, well, that's that person, that's what they're doing, and you start to really, I think, associate with it. So you can then bring some of these things, especially if they go along to sprints, they can see, okay, so, you know, how the community deals with things like bug fixes and version control and all this kind of stuff, and start bringing that back, so they can see that what you're doing within an organization fits with what the rest of the community are doing.
Tarek, did I see your hand? You.
Yeah, we're having some problems to contribute to the Plone code and to the collective code, because in France, in Paris, we have 20 developers in GenieWeb, and I think 2 of them speak English. That's me and another one. So you have this language barrier that makes it hard for us to contribute to the collective and the Plone code. So maybe we could try to work this out at the community level and find ways to link people. For example, I think on every project we do for us, our customers, 80% of the code we are doing could be given back to the community, because, well, I mean, we're integrators, so most of the code rewrite is new products, because we reuse existing products. And the problem is that we are unable at this time to find the best way to contribute the code. The only way I could find to contribute the code was to make sure my developers would start their code with the collective namespace. And in the meantime, some of them start to work on some products and realize someone else was doing the very same feature in another collective products or in another products. So I think there is a information flow problem at our level, and that needs to be enhanced somehow at the community level. So I don't know, maybe some guys that can link guys together because they know what's going on, or maybe a mailing list where we can all share, all the company that are involved in creating products can share what they are doing, so everyone knows what's going on, something like that.
Chris?
I just wanted to make a follow-up on that, and I think this is another, to Calvin's point of the role of the non-developer. I think this is a really important point where we need to have better collaboration between developers and non-developers in the flow of information. I mean, what Tarek's talking about not getting information about who's doing what products. I mean, how do we have that information circulating better in the community? And especially, I mean, from my experience and, you know, starting our company in Argentina and then having a network of developers that is mostly in South America, I see the international community as really Plone's core sort of strategic advantage in the growth over the next period here. And we need better ways of engaging those people. We need better ways of bringing them into the community so that they feel more supported. So I think addressing those barriers, internationalizing the community, and also just making sure we're doing a better job of reaching out to those folks is really important to having our work processes able to contribute back to helping Plone.
And related to what Tarek is saying about, like, there might be 80% of the code done for a project that you could technically contribute back and share somehow, and I think we see the same number. Many times we face challenges getting this done. Not only that language barrier is one, there may be technical stops, there may be the actual, like, work involved in things like contract restrictions. Are there ways that we can make it easier for, like, improve processes so that we as companies can do more of that contribution of the code that we actually write, and to get clients, since we're all consultants somehow, get clients to buy into the idea of actually sharing what is built and sharing it with the world and contributing back.
I was going to say, I think we have it pretty easy, at least the companies that are right here, because we have kind of in the back of our head as a goal, like always giving back. I think there's probably an untapped resource of developers that are out there who are in companies who aren't as conducive to giving back. So they may have, like I said, contract restrictions or NDAs or things like that are kind of just red tape standing in the way. And I don't know how we can get through to those people. I think it's probably easy for us because we build into our contract, or at least try to build into our contracts, you know, that anything we do, we'd like to be able to give back. I mean, even if we don't, I mean, it's there. And what's nice is a lot of our customers are so happy to see that. So we haven't run into a lot of barriers with that.
Right. Not others either. Just like even if the legal stuff is okay.
I'd say for the great majority of what we've done so far,
Right,
yeah, we've
excellent.
not had an issue.
Chris, good.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think the point of the legal issues is something where it's really important that we as companies take a stand. You know, I got into what I'm doing now because I was working on sustainability and social issues in companies, and someone introduced us to free software from a philosophical perspective, and we're like, wow, this is a great overlap. This makes a lot of sense. And so for me, that sort of core, like Calvin is saying, it's like in the back of the head where it's like you want to give back here. And I recently had an experience where I was probably one of the largest clients I was ever doing a bid for, and it came down to the contract negotiation part. And you know, with the large clients, the purchasing department's dealing with the negotiation with the vendors. You don't ever talk with the client. And the client had actually specified Plone. And so they're obviously on board with open source. And then I get a standard contract from, you know, it says that we can't even use what we write for them. And I said, you guys asked for Plone. This is ridiculous. I'm not signing your contract. And I was scared to say that because it was a big client that I really wanted to get. And like, I pushed it off, and like, I found out that basically ended up sparking conversations at the very high political level. Like they gave us an exception for our contract, so we ended up getting the bid. And they started a whole sort of system-wide conversation about how to incorporate open source. And I don't know, I'm really grateful for all the folks who've like really schooled me in what open source and free software is about. That sort of gave me the courage to do that. But that was like so much fun for me to be able to say like, I'm just gonna have to take a stand here, and like that it made a difference. So, you know, don't be afraid. I think there's a lot of work out there in Plone these days, and you know, be true to your values and make sure that your contracts reflect that too.
I would absolutely recommend companies that haven't experienced stuff around this and haven't really taken a stand on that issue yet to like talk with other companies and get templates and stuff to get the legal stuff in order up front, just to make sure, so that you're allowed to do that sharing and stuff if that is in line with what you would like to. There's a question.
So it seems hard enough for a company of 6 to 20 people to do the 10% manifesto. When you've got 2 people and you're like, you know, seriously overworked, what's the best way other than say that you update? Weekends.
I mean, the way we started with that, it was just by, as you're going to run across problems in Plone. I'm not going to make any you know, false facades that Plone doesn't have bugs, but reporting those things. I mean, this little stuff like that is really important, because you may think it's so obvious that someone else has already reported it. By taking the time and going to the tracker and searching and see if it's already reported and then reporting those bugs, I think is equally as important as going and fixing some of those bugs.
Investing that time gives like a multiple return in skill level and communications and the ability to find people to help out. The 10% manifesto is harder because it's built around the idea of a company, of an organization. Doing unstructured contribution and participation is simpler, but it's always a challenge, like fighting the amount of work you have to do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Participate on mailing lists and IRC and go to events, go to sprints. Like set off 4 days and go to a sprint. It's probably the most rewarding thing you can do as a single person or few.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to sort of add on that. Yeah, it is a hard thing to do. As Gare said, you know, go along to something like a sprint is very good because you can fairly well lock yourself away. But tell your clients about it. They're really interested in these things. You know, I mean, you tell them, hey, we're going up the top of a mountain and staying in a wooden hut with 30 developers and a satellite link that we got to wander outside and wipe the snow off every half hour. So, you know, otherwise we get packet loss. You know, they're interested in these things. They're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And they're generally, you know, it's something there that's very different. I mean, our involvement with sort of the community has changed over time. And I think this is probably reflected on a lot of companies as well, that most companies say start off with 1 or 2 people, and they grow over time. And you start off with 1 or 2 people, normally being developers, right? And then as you grow, you start to require sort of more infrastructure, and you start to get on say, non-coding jobs. You start to get salespeople, marketing people, you know, that sort of thing. And it's normally only until you get to like probably the size of like, you know, 8 or 10 people that you suddenly see that there's more contribution you can do than just code. So we found as say NetSite, we used to do, you know, a lot more contribution about 3 years ago than we did, say, 6 months ago. We've been busy, you know, working on our stuff and paying our bills and, you know, building up the company. And now suddenly we've sort of looked around and said, oh, wait a minute, we've got to get back in there with the community and really try and make a conscious effort, because it will slip even with a larger organization. You know, as Gare said, the 10% manifesto, it's difficult to kind of lock yourselves away and work on some of these things. But, you know, don't forget that there's people within an organization that are not developers that can definitely get involved with these sort of things. So we've got, you know, like our design people helping with the Plone.org redesign. You know, documentation is a big thing. There's a lot of people here who have sort of worked on the documentation. That's a fantastic thing to get involved with. And as a company, like I said, as a company grows, there's various sort of different ways in which they can contribute.
And one thing I think too is just you know, as you're starting up, thinking about how you can use the time that you actually are spending learning in the new things that you're like getting into as a way to actually be also being constructive and contributing. You know, in our FairSource process, which is FairSource is a standard of trade and services that's based on fair trade. And part of the adaptation we'd made to trade and service is just to say that this is a knowledge industry. We have to be learning. If we're not learning, we're dead. And so we try and carve out, kind of like the 10% manifesto, we say a 10% time for continuous education. And it's been mostly unstructured, and it hasn't been very strategic in that sense over the last like 3 or 4 years that we've been doing it. And now we're starting to actually work it into how can this relate to like individual goals for learning, and making sure people are actually progressing on those as well. And if you give them the opportunity, say, look, you can do it by being involved in a project in the Plone community, or doing a project you know, for a particular cause that you see worthy, gives them something where they start to form these relationships. And I think that's really where it becomes fun, right? It's not just, oh, I have to go do something to help out Plone, but you know the people, it's fun, you enjoy the interaction with them, so it just starts to build on itself and sort of get like, you know, multiple benefits.
The overlap between your 10% continuous education and the 10% like contribution manifesto is incredibly large. And what you see is like deciding to work with the Plone community and the sharing idea is not just a like giving back to be nice model. It returns a lot, because like participating in this community allows developers to like get into the spirit of how the whole thing works, and it also teaches enormous amounts of like good development practices. A community of 100, of 200, of 700 people that work together in a shared code repository has to have incredible discipline when it comes to quality assurance compared to what a two-man company must do. And by working in this environment, you will learn all these processes and actually get into making much, much better code. And if you also start practices by like putting your code in the open from the moment you start, there is going to be people helping out or commenting or telling you what's wrong and how it could be better, possibly other people use it, and you can get all those benefits already from the stuff that you would be doing anyway.
I think you're going to need a tough skin sometimes. Like you said, you've got hundreds of people contributing. You have to have this kind of rigorous, potentially QA process to ensure code quality. So what people may come in and they may fix something and they may get a terse comment from somebody. I think you need to kind of realize that it's not necessarily personal. It's just that we're all very busy and we don't have the time to write like nice fluffy letters about, you know, why this may not be the best solution for what you've done. But don't take that as we don't want you to contribute code. And so I think that's something we need to work on too, is being maybe a little nicer in our emails. But at the same time, I don't think people should get discouraged by it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A bit more community emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actual clients in this 10% manifesto concept, and actually, you know,
Can you hear him? Can everyone hear him?
So my name is Chris Ewing. I work for the University of Washington Department of Radiology, and I commissioned Web Collective and Brian and Eric and the folks that work for them to build a product called MetaNav that we needed for a particular application that we wanted to get done, trying to create navigational possibilities that didn't exist at the time in Plone. And the way that I sold it to the people that I worked for was you know, we're going to give this back to the community, but at the same time, we also get to leverage the power of the community to make that product a better thing. And I think we also do these Open Source Friday things in Seattle, where on Friday afternoons we all get together, we work on projects, and we try to make commits into the collective and so on. And again, the way that I'm justifying this to the people that I work for and to the rest of the team that I work with as a leader of a development team is to try and convince them that, yes, I'm spending my time working on a product that other people are using, but at the same time that I'm doing that, there's a lot of other people out there who are working on the products that I am using. And so there's an economy of scale that allows me to leverage the work of a huge community simply by contributing the small amount of work that I do. And that really, it resonates well with the people that I work for. When I can show them that the products that we're using are moving forward and I wasn't doing anything on them, somebody else went and fixed this and somebody else went and implemented that feature, it really makes it a lot easier for me to convince the administrative types that I have to justify my time to that it was actually time well spent.
Yeah, we ran into something really similar recently with a product we put into the collective. We found a bug, went to go check out the repository to fix the bug and realized someone had already fixed it. Not even announced to us. It was already done.
We try to involve this and do bake this into the process entirely and extensively sell the idea of collaboration and open source sharing to our customers. And we usually tell them that it's going to take more work to do things properly enough, and I've never seen a real protest to that. They always buy into the idea of doing something the really, really good way and taking the effort to actually putting the word out and getting it known in the community and getting adoption. If there's anything that's like large enough, you don't want as a client to own a product and being responsible for maintaining it over versions, but you want to use your component for like 5 years, and by having to maintain it yourself, you end up with all liability and no special. If you can get it to be adopted as the state-of-the-art solution for that kind of problem, there will be a whole community maintaining it and keeping it on and leaving you not alone. Alex?
So Paul Everett has a great, one-sentence answer to that, which is software is a liability, not an asset. Like, stop thinking about software as something you own. Start thinking about it as something you have to maintain. And when you start talking to your clients like that, they understand that, if we develop this and keep it to ourselves, we have to maintain it. If we share it, there's a chance that somebody else will be interested and they can get more for less. So I just like that software is a liability, not an asset. It's just a perfect summary of what it is. So.
Yeah.
It is part of the deal we do in contractual negotiations, like the fact that we will have the copyright for software and we release it as GPL, and in return to the client we will we actually promise in contract we will put in an effort to increase adoption of this in the software community, so that there is less of a chance that you'll be left maintaining it on your own.
That's great.
Sorry.
In some projects, we can be almost at 100% manifesto. I mean,
Yeah.
well, I mean, we don't sell code. We sell services. We sell integration. I mean, we could, on some project, we could do all our products in the collective because the customer don't care. I mean, it's GPL. He bought GPL and open source, and he just wants his stuff to work, no matter if the code is located on the collective or not, because you don't have any sensitive stuff there. The sensitive stuff is the documents he's going to put in his intranet we're going to deliver. from there, for me, the only problem we have actually right now in the collective is to link people and to be able to make people share knowledge and work on the same products. I mean, I'd say more than the half of the project we are doing, we could work them fully on the collective, and we wouldn't mind doing it. It's just a problem of having like a project manager, a collective project manager, maybe someone that tries to link people together. Because sometimes I've been frustrated. I've been working on some product, and I realized someone else was working on the same product, and we have to link people. I mean, it's not the problem of where the code is located or whatever. It's the problem of what we are selling to our customer and how we want to organize ourselves to work together. And I think there are two levels of contribution. There is Plone, and most of us don't have the time to contribute to the Plone core itself, don't have the knowledge to do it. And there is the collective, where everyone can contribute. And I think we can have two levels of contribution: the Plone and the 10% stuff, and the collective, where everyone can contribute. But if we need someone that works it, I mean, manage to link people together and stuff. Wow.
I volunteer Chris.
I decline. The collective to me is total chaos. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that the problem Tarek mentions of the information flow, how do you know what's in there that's good and not? I mean,
yeah.
Producing a product and getting the community to adopt it as like a standard and a tool is really hard. I mean, that's been kind of the experience with Get Paid. It's like, you know, we actually managed to go out, and from the beginning we said, look, we want a bunch of people to sign on to this, and we're gonna, and we actually, in terms of Eric's question about the, you know, how we do this, like we literally went on and we tried to get a bunch of people who were interested in the product that would result from this to co-sponsor it. And the people who were on board, I mean, there's some people who were like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna get my feature out of that, so they didn't want to contribute. But there's a lot of people who said, look, I can give $1,000, and there's going to be over $10,000 given total by these other people, which will, you know, which basically gives me a 10-to-1 leverage on my contribution in terms of what I get out of this. And so it was hard. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of conversation, and it's something that we tried and Get Paid like as a collaborative design process, and it's something that John Stahl and I are going to be talking about tomorrow in a session called Collaborative Design Process. But I think that's one of the key barriers, is how do you get better communication and sign-on and collaboration in the community?
Yeah, Tarek first and then John, or?
Well, I was going to sort of respond to Tarek's first question, but
Let John go then.
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
to sort of just pick up on what Chris was saying, and as sort of an answer to Tarek, I don't think there's a single magic bullet about how to improve the coordination, but I think in my experience, one thing that is very easy to do that has a huge, I think has a huge impact in terms of visibility and communication is like before you, basically just to write about what you're planning to do before you go out and do it. Because it takes, half an hour to write the blog post and put it up there. And, most people in the community are actually paying attention to what's coming across on Planet Plone and stuff. And you'll find that if you put, you write that half hour and say, here's the problem I'm having, here's what I'm thinking about doing about it, you'll find that, if someone else has got that itch, they'll usually pop up and surface. And so that's a pretty low effort thing to do. It doesn't require a lot of a system, a lot of coordination. And then once you find those people, you know who to go have the conversation with, and you can kind of go from there. So I'd put in a plea for that. It's not magical, but it does work.
Yeah, that's right. But I want to talk about an example. There is a product called Zopscale, right? It's in the collective. And maybe if we could have a label, certified product label in the collective saying, okay, this product is maintained. There is a build bot running in it that tries to see if everything is okay. We have tests, and we know that this is a product.
This is a very old discussion that is actually, there are things happening, moving in this direction.
All right.
Not for the collective, The collective is just a source control repository, but for the product management on plone.org. But I see that like slightly on the side of this discussion, but I completely agree that we need it. Like it's absolutely necessary, but it doesn't really differ for individual developers or for companies. It's something we need, and for users, everyone needs a sense of like knowing whether products are maintained and to a certain quality level.
That's something I got discussed at the summit.
Hmm?
We talked about that at the planning summit also.
Absolutely.
Which was like,
Yeah, we
how
created we created a build out actually, and we are watching a few products we don't want to get broken. And I think this could be done in the community level for something.
It is already happening.
All right, cool.
And like the more people that really want to help out with it, the better. Absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to add one more comment to the sharing and contribution part that we see is that we've experienced lately that the attitude from people gradually, as you work with open source and sharing with them, gradually just to be more and more positive. We lately had an experience where we found that we needed certain, like, we needed to build certain part of infrastructure to make Plone's caching more efficient. And it turned out to be estimated to be a rather large amount of work that we wouldn't, like, that we didn't really expect any of our clients to be ready to take the cost of, because I think it's too much for one individual project. So we basically said, well, we suggest splitting it in three, and we went to our 3 biggest clients and said, we can do this, and you can cover 1/3 of the cost, and we get 2 others to cover the 1/3 of the cost, and it'll make Plone go faster. And all of them say yes. But it's a really, really nice way of distributing cost and working, because it benefits them and it benefits everyone else. And if you split it out a bit, it's usually manageable enough for anyone to cover.
I mean, Chris, isn't that what you've been trying to do with some of the Get Paid stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we've essentially been trying to get that same thing to happen on Get Paid. Exactly. So, and I think and I'm not sure what the specific follow-up on what you had mentioned, Garrett, to Tarek in terms of like this is already happening, but it'd be good to know where to go specifically to get engaged with that, because I'm not aware.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's actually pushing the process. It's already happening in the community, but I don't know like who's writing the software. If there is a blockage on like waiting for plone.org to upgrade, talk to Alex and Hanno and Martin Aspli, and they'll probably send you off to someone else that is actually doing the code. But at least they know where we are in the process.
The Plone upgrade?
Plone and Net and Software Center. Yeah. Right. But in the case, like Tarek said, in some projects, we could theoretically have close to 100% manifest, like contribution level on software. What is stopping us? Like how can we change how we work so that we can manage that? Because the not knowing what already exists doesn't stop that. That's a different way. That stops us from reusing things that are already there. But
well, who here has never underbid on a project? I think that might be part of it. There is an overhead to producing the quality software, and when you run over on a budget, it really makes it kind of it's a little bit salty to like go back and make sure you do it right, put it in the collective, or contribute the code back. I mean, we should be doing this. I think the problem sometimes is maybe more business related than necessarily like intentions.
Well, it comes back to bite you when you need to maintain it afterwards.
Absolutely, I agree with you completely.
Tarek?
Yeah, you don't need to package it and provide us a box with a nice little pink stuff on the top of your package. As long as it lives in the collective, if other people start to look at it, I mean, we trying to push stuff in the collective as soon as we start them, even if it's not packaged, because we found out that was the best way to share with people. So I don't think you really need, when you work in a project, to push the packaging of your open source product. I think it's okay for products not to be packaged and 100% documented in the collective. Well, that's what we think.
Yeah, I mean, there is a point to that, and that just kind of chuck it out there. But I think one of the problems being is you then possibly end up with a scenario that you've now got that you don't know what's in the collective, because there's, you do need to spend some time in. I mean, I don't know, we're feeling probably slightly different than I think what other people here have been saying, in that, saying about, well, we could make, the 100% of the project in the collective. I think maybe we're just slightly different in the way that we work, but so much of what we do is specific to the client. That's if it wasn't, they would just take Plone out the box and they would use it. I mean, what we're doing is we're adapting Plone to their specific business requirements. Now, I'm not saying that their requirements aren't necessarily the same as other people's, but in many cases they are very specific to them. And if we just start, littering the collective with just random customizations for everybody, I think that's probably going to be the wrong way to go. Now, how we balance those two aspects is obviously a very, difficult subject in terms of, how much stuff do you put in the collective? And also a project, changes over time, so you might start off with it being something very internal and specific to the client, and then it gets to a point where, okay, maybe it is ready for the collective. Maybe it now is more generic, or, or vice versa, depending on how things go.
I think we need to get, I think we're running out of time. Close. So I think we need to get the last couple of questions from the room. And you're first, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself before. I'm Dylan J from ProtoWeb. One thing is a potential solution. One thing that we've started selling, in addition to doing a support contract and a maintenance contract, based actually on Jan's. If anyone wants to have a look at a good model for support and maintenance contracts, it's very good. But one thing we've proposed to our clients recently is a software improvement contract in addition. So the idea is like a retainer for you to improve their software and any open source software as part of the solution. And I think we've got a good response from that so far. And another potential solution, I'm really interested what Tarek has been saying. I think that there's no good index to products. There's no sort of, what's the problem, here are the potential solutions. And that's something I'm working on a little bit on, something called Kaizen Plone, which is like a wiki for problems with Plone. So what's the best way of doing this? It's a wiki for best practice. And that's potentially could be a good way to do an index of, well, here's the problems and here are all the different possible solutions, and they index into everyone doing, and it has a voting system.
That's a great idea.
So.
Francesco has to go next then. I think we're running into lunch, so.
Sorry, I'll try to be quick. Francesco from RefLab, and we have quite a long experience in contributing pieces of software or product into Plone. And what we've found later that technology has something to say. There's a dimension that we haven't discussed here, is that infrastructure products or very complex like product are very difficult, requires coordination, requires knowing the software and communication and so on. But if we lower the pieces of software that we need to develop, like we can contribute more with less coordination, less effort in designing smaller pieces of software that can be reused and then combined with others to produce the full solution. And we're heading there. And we can do it. I think a good job in moving into more Pythonic and Python way of developing Plone. And I think that in the design of the architecture, we can do when we designed the software at the beginning with the customer, we can do a good job in then working like this.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the attitude you start out with, like how do we structure the project, and what do we build as software, what do we build as the last team. You're the last one.
I'm kind of upset that I can't actually remember the name of this, but I read a blog post on Daring